Now, when you work with the time editor and human IK, often it is a good idea to start using what are called namespaces. Now, this allows you the freedom to move data between characters. Now, if you're only working with one character, you probably don't need to use namespaces. But if you're going to be moving data from one character to another, namespaces can be very helpful. Let's take a look at this character in the outliner. This character's name is Cyborg, and we have one for the mesh, and then the actual human IK rig is called cyborg_character. And then we have reference, and then we have the control rig. Now, for what we're doing, we need to pay attention to the control rig. So I'm only going to work with this. But if you notice this, the names are basically fixed. So if we want to move data between characters, we need to set up what is called the namespace so we can strip out the old name and put in new names. So we can do this using the Namespace Editor. So we can find this under Windows, General Editors, Namespace Editor. Right now there's really not much in there. Really all that's in there is the scene data, and this is basically the root. So what we want to do is create a new namespace and then add some stuff to it. Now before we do that, I want to rename these with a more generic name. Now this is the key for working with human IK, is you want the rig to have a generic name for each one of these. So hips effector, you don't want it to be cyborg character control hips effector. You want it to be something like _control hips effector, and then we add the namespace to it. Now this may seem a little confusing, but let's just go through the process here and you'll see what we have. Now remember these original names, but what we want to do is basically expand this whole rig. So anything with cyborg character control, we want to make sure that we just expand the whole thing. I want to be able to select everything in here. So I'm basically just expanding all of this until I can select it all. So now I'm going to go ahead and select all of these objects. And if you notice, we're basically selecting the human IK rig. So this is all of the rig. Now the first thing I want to do is basically rename this. So let's go into Modify, Search and Replace Names. So I want to search for Cyborg Character Control in the selected object. So this is everything that I've highlighted. And I just want to replace it with _control. So if I hit Apply, that will do that. We need to set this up with a namespace. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new namespace. I'm going to double click on this. I'm going to give it a name. I'm just going to call it CY for Cyborg Rig, R-I-G. Click OK. So now I have a namespace with nothing in it. You notice here we can add or subtract objects to any one of these. So if I list the contents of that, it doesn't have anything in it. But I still have everything here selected, so I'm going to add these selected. Now notice what happened when I added them. It basically renamed this. So now it's Cyborg Rig _control reference, hips effector, and so on. So now I have a namespace which allows me to change this prefix to whatever I want. And this is going to be very important when we move animation between characters. So we're going to go ahead and do that next.